following Advising the Student Athlete presentation took place live via Zoom on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, students, parents, guardians, and District 214. My name is Christopher Chocolis, and I'm the post-secondary counselor at John Hersey High School. My other counterparts, the post-secondary counselors at the other schools, are on as well, and you can see their pictures cycling through. There you go, right now. So on behalf of all of them, we'd like to welcome you to the District 214 Advising the Student Athlete Night and presentation. A couple of housekeeping items, as you may have read on one of the slides before we get started. First, in order to limit distractions and be able to record and share this presentation later on, we've set this Zoom up to not allow anyone to turn their cameras on or unmute themselves. So if you have questions for the presenter, please send them directly to me on there as the host. Just send them to me in the chat, and I will compile them as we go along. If there's something I can maybe answer for you, I will. Otherwise, I will compile them all. And then when our presentation is done, I will pose them to our presenter and we'll go from there. So that way we can kind of have things go as smoothly as possible throughout the presentation. So thank you for your patience and understanding with that. So stay tuned later this week or into next week for follow-up communication from your school's post-secondary counselor with a recording and slides from today. And of course, feel free to reach out to them with further questions after this evening. We won't have time for really specific individual situations. So all the questions hopefully will be for the good of the cause and very general based. So with that said, let's kind of get into our program here. So between Zoom and other things, you may not be able to tell that I myself was a former NCAA Division I athlete, believe it or not. So it was a while ago, but I can speak personally as being a former college student athlete about how this adds to the whole process, the college search process, the application process, and then of course, making that final decision. So it's already a complicated process, as I'm sure you all know. And so this makes it even a little bit more complicated. And so that's why we're excited to have tonight's guest speaker, Ms. Maureen Hardy, here to talk about some of these things that students should be considering as they begin the process. So Ms. Maureen Hardy began her tenure as the executive director of the College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin on July 1st, 2019. As the executive director, she oversees all the aspects of conference operations, including governance, financial operations, compliance, and championships. Prior to the CCIW, Ms. Hardy held a variety of positions in college athletics, including commissioner of the Heartland Collegiate Athletic Association. She was an associate director at the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, associate athletics director for compliance, academic services, and student development at Northwestern University. Assistant Dean of Students, Director of Athletics and Recreation and Coach at Dominican University in River Forest, and Assistant Director of Athletics and Recreation and Coach at St. Mary's College in Notre Dame. She's also been on the faculty at Northwestern, Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis, or IUPUI, and North Central College. She holds a Master of Business Administration with a concentration in management from Dominican, and a Master of Science in Recreation ABT from the University of Kentucky. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Physical Education with a concentration in commercial sports from Colorado State University, where Ms. Hardy competed as a women's golf student athlete. So if that didn't tell you that she is qualified, more than qualified to speak on this subject, then I don't know what will. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Ms. Maureen Hardy.
Got to unmute myself. Thanks, Christopher. Great to be with all of you this evening. I grew up in Arlington Heights. I live in Mount Prospect now. So District 214 is my home district. So it's exciting to talk with all of you this evening. We're not going to solve all the problems of the world this evening, but I'm really hoping you take a few seeds away that will make you start thinking about the process to become a collegiate student athlete. I have to do a plug here for my own conference. As Christopher mentioned, I'm the executive director of the College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin, and you can see here the schools that are in our conference. We're a Division III conference. Our office is in Naperville, and obviously all our schools are in Illinois and Wisconsin. So let's start talking a little bit about the state of NCAA athletics. Not only is the world changing constantly, so is the world of athletics. One of the things you may have heard some rumors about is the NCAA Constitution is currently being rewritten and hopefully will be adopted in January. And so you're going to see some changes coming out of this in all three divisions. There may be some loosening of rules, some things that the NCAA oversees, the conferences will now start to oversee. You may see some eligibility changes. So I just want to kind of give you a heads up that you do need to just be aware that changes are coming over the next several months. Okay, so just keep an eye out, like I mentioned, for changes. Also, one of the things in the new Constitution is an emphasis on student athlete well-being. Many of you might have heard about the name, image, and likeness laws that were passed in July. This is the result of some of these conversations. So again, just make sure you're kind of keeping your eyes on what's going on so you're not surprised when it comes time for you to enroll. The last is you'll see some changes amongst conferences. So we've seen it a lot already at the Division I level. We're also seeing it at the Division III level. So don't be surprised if you're a freshman or a sophomore and you've been looking at a school and all of a sudden you hear that they're moving to another conference. It's just the state of athletics at this point. So how has the pandemic affected the athletics? Well, it has affected the rosters for this year in particular, and it could for rosters in the next year or two, because a lot of seniors stayed for an additional year because they lost out because of COVID. So you may find that there may not be as many scholarships available or as many roster spots available even next year. So you want to be talking with coaches about that and find out how many students are coming back for an additional year. One of the real positives that came out of the pandemic is that coaches have learned how to recruit virtually. And so you can sit and have a conversation with a coach via Zoom. You can get to know them, they can get to know you. The facial expressions, the mannerisms, all of that are so important. So you don't need to go to campus to have that interaction with a coach. You can start via Zoom. They've also learned they've got to watch more games online because they can't travel as much. And so they're actually watching more games than you realize because they're watching them as they're being streamed. Coaches are looking for students who have overcome adversity. So what does this mean? Well, the pandemic really threw some challenges at you all, but they want to see those of you that rose to the occasion, still did well in school, still stayed in shape, found ways to go out in the garage or go out in the driveway or over to the park and shoot baskets, or you found a backboard to hit against in tennis, whatever the case may be. They really want to see, how did you overcome the adverse effects of COVID? How did you rise to the occasion during this pandemic? And if you said that you sat home and you didn't do your homework and you didn't go to class online and you ate bonbons and sat on the couch, well, you got to right the ship pretty quick now. But if you can say, yeah, this is what I did while we were in quarantine, I did this, I did this, I did this, and my grades were still good, coaches are going to be impressed by that. The other thing is coaches weren't able to work with their own students as often last year. And so students were left to hold themselves accountable. coaches handed out workouts, and because there were a limited number of individuals who could be in a weight room, for example, with, within a certain time period, they had to say, okay, here's your workout, go do it. And so they're looking for individuals, again, who will hold themselves accountable when they came to campus, because they realized those that held themselves accountable stayed in shape and were ready to go once they were able to compete. So let's talk about the opportunities that are available to you. The first is the junior college route. And in Illinois, we have one of the strongest junior college programs in the country. We have more junior colleges than many states do. There are approximately 450 junior college athletic programs around the country. There was a day that the only reason somebody went to junior college was they didn't get that Division I scholarship and they wanted to get stronger, faster. But now students are starting to realize that from an academic perspective, sometimes going to a junior college for a year or two, taking some of those general requirements and getting them out of the way, and then transferring to a four-year school. So this is an opportunity for some of you to not only get ahead athletically, but academically, and then try to decide exactly where you want to go. Oops. There we go. The next is the NAIA, and the NAIA is a separate organization from the NCAA, but it is all four-year schools, and they can offer some athletic scholarships. NAIA schools in this area are Trinity Christian, Trinity International, Olivet Nazarene, Judson College. They're all part of the NAIA. You have to remember, at the end of the day, if you win a national championship at an NAIA school, you still get a ring on your finger. So don't be dissuaded because it's not the NCAA. There are a lot of opportunities within the NAIA that may not be posed to you as an NCAA student athlete. Like I mentioned, they do offer scholarships. Now let's talk about the NCAA. Divided up into three divisions: Division I, Division II, Division III. Division I, those are the big dogs, the Wisconsins, the Illinois, the Notre Dames of the world, but it's also some smaller schools you may not realize. So private schools like DePaul, Loyola, Marquette, but also state schools like Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois, Southern Illinois. They're all Division I schools. And you can see here there are approximately 350 Division I schools, and that makes up about 32% of the NCAA. Next is Division II. Division II can offer you an athletic scholarship. It's just on a smaller scale. Their programs are generally smaller, not as many sports. Division II schools include Wisconsin Parkside, Lewis University, Quincy College. They may be Quincy University now. There are 310 Division II schools in the country. They make up 26% or 28% rather of the NCAA. And then the last but biggest division is Division III. There's 438 Division III schools. It's 40% of the membership of the NCAA. All of the schools in my conference are Division III, in addition to schools like Forest, Benedictine, Dominican University. They're all Division III schools. So you can see that there's a lot of opportunity within the NCAA, but the majority of your opportunities are going to be Division III. It's not to say that you can't go D1 or D2, but it's just important to know that there are more members in Division III than the other two divisions. If you have one takeaway from tonight, this is it. You need to go online to the NCAA Eligibility Center website tonight. What you're going to do when you pull up the page, you're going to see this: want to play college sports. You'll see towards the bottom in that yellow circle is a button to push that says register. You're going to hit that button, and it's going to take you to this page. You have two options within the NCAA Eligibility Center. One is to create an account, which is on the left, or create a profile page, which is on the right. I would start with a profile page no matter what. One, it's free, so that's a good thing. When you go in to create a profile page, you're going to put in the information about your high school. You're going to put in what sports you participate in. You're going to put in your contact information. Make sure you write down what email address you've entered and the password that you've entered so you don't forget. And that will then put you into the database for the NCAA. You know, I mentioned that there's going to be changes coming. The easiest way to find out if changes are coming is to be part of this system so that they will generate information for you and send you updates. So this is really important. If you want to play college athletics in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, please do this. So you know exactly what's happening and you get that information real time. You can do this as a freshman, sophomore, junior, doesn't matter. You can start your profile page very early in the process. Then, if you believe you're going to go Division I or Division II, you can then create an account. And if you already have the profile page set up, you then go in, create an account. It'll ask you if you already have a profile page. You'll say yes. You put in your number and it'll transfer all the information over. You will have to pay a fee, however, to create an account. So that's why it's important, create that profile page because it's free. And then when you're ready, if you believe you're going to go D1 or D2, or you start to get interest from D1 and D2 schools, then you can shift over to an account, pay the fee, and you'll be good to go. So let's talk a little bit about the eligibility process for all 3 divisions. Division 3, the student has to be admitted as a full-time student who is seeking a degree. There's no eligibility center certification. You just have to be admitted to the school. If you're admitted to the school, then you can play athletics at the Division 3 level. The eligibility center is required for Division 1 and 2, as I mentioned. You have to have an account and they will certify your eligibility to compete at the Division 1 or the Division 2 level. A couple things, when you establish that account, they're going to ask for your test scores, your ACT or your SAT. Those were waived for this year's class, but they won't be waived for next year's class, at least not as of today. So those scores have to come directly from the testing agency. So when you sign up to take ACT or SAT, you're going to send those, request that those scores be sent directly from ACT or SAT. You can use the scores from multiple tests to achieve a required score, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then your high school needs to submit your transcript. If you are a transfer student and you attended more than one high school, you're going to need an official transcript from every high school you attended. So all of those are necessary to set up an account. None of this is necessary to simply set up a profile page. So if you are looking at Division 2, this is the breakdown of courses that you will need to be eligible. You need 3 years of English, 2 years of math, 2 years of science, 3 years of additional English, math, or science, 2 social studies or social science, and then 4 additional courses. And this is where your foreign language will fall in, some religion courses. Generally, you really will be pulling from extra social studies or science, or somewhere along the way you've taken those additional courses. And there are 2 ways to be qualified. One is a full qualifier. So you need those 16 core courses. You need a core course GPA, which is the GPA in just those 16 core courses. Your grades in PE or art or music, they don't count. To calculate that core course GPA, it's just those 16 core courses. You need an ACT or SAT score that matches, and I'll show you that in a moment. And obviously you need to graduate. This is to be a full qualifier, and you can see on the right, as a full qualifier in Division II, you get to practice, you get to compete, and you can receive that athletic scholarship that they've offered you. If you come up just short, you've got 16 core courses, but only a 2.0 GPA, then you're a partial qualifier. You can still get that athletic scholarship and you can practice, but you're not going to be allowed to compete in your first year. You're going to be asked to focus on academics and prove that you can do the academic portion before you get to participate in the athletic portion. Division I is similar, but not the same. 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, 1 year additional, 2 years of social studies, and 4 years of additional courses. So you'll see the biggest difference there is the English. The Division I has two different classifications than Division II. Full qualifier, just as before, you need those 16 core courses. The one difference with Division I, 10 of those courses have to be completed by the end of your junior year. And they did this because they found there were students who were lagging behind, and then by some miracle, they were able to complete 12 core courses in their senior year. So you can't do those shenanigans anymore. You have to make sure that you are steadily knocking off those core courses over the course of your high school career. You have to have that GPA of 2.3. So remember, with Division II, it was 2.2. So it is possible you could be eligible in Division II and not be eligible in Division I. So that's why it's, again, important to register and have all of this information available to you when you do register that account with the NCAA Eligibility Center. Then NCAA Division I has the academic red shirt. This is if, again, your GPA isn't quite as high as it needs to be for the full qualifier. And those academic red shirts, as you can see there, they will receive scholarships, they can practice, but they will not compete in their first year. So again, this seems like a lot of information, but once you register your account and you set up that profile, you will have access to the guide for college-bound student athletes, and all of this information is included in there. So it talks about the sliding scale for both Division I and Division II, and this is what it looks like for Division I. Your core GPA, remember, those are just your core courses. It's not your overall GPA. And then if you look at the SAT and the ACT, you're looking and you're thinking, how do they come up with those numbers? Well, the SAT, obviously, you add up the two scores. In the ACT, they're not going to look at your composite at all. They're going to add up the 4 individual scores. So let's say you're on the bubble and you've taken the ACT 2 or 3 times. They'll go through and they'll take your top scores in each of the 4 components of the ACT to come up with your sum. So if you're short, you may want to take that ACT again and try to increase the scores that were low. Same with the SAT. Again, if you take it more than once, they'll take your best 2 scores from depending on how many times you take it. The NLI, so this is the National Letter of Intent program. You may have heard a little bit about it recently. There may have been some students on your campus who signed an NLI stating they're going to play Division I or Division II athletics. You will not see an NLI for Division III. Division III does have a commitment letter that you can sign if your school is having a ceremony, but you won't go through the NLI process. NLI is separate from the NCAA. They have their own website. Highly encourage you, if you're going to go Division I or Division II and receive an athletic scholarship, to go online and read carefully what you'll be signing in advance. The NLI is actual legal contract between you and the institution, not you and the coach. You know, we just saw the big announcement yesterday, Brian Kelly's leaving Notre Dame. There are probably some young men who committed to going to Notre Dame thinking they were playing for Brian Kelly. Well, just because Brian Kelly is leaving, it doesn't mean that those students can back out, because they signed that agreement with Notre Dame. Now, the other part of that is Notre Dame signed that agreement with the students. So they have to honor those scholarships that if they've been signed and they've been executed, then Notre Dame still has to honor those scholarships. So it is a two-way street, but important to remember, doesn't matter if the coach stays or not, you're still committed to that school. I always like to show this slide. You know, we all had dreams of playing collegiate sports and going on to be a professional. But the reality is, you know, there was an old saying, you're going to be a professional in something other than sports. And for the majority of you, that's true. You know, we do have the success cases in the suburbs here, and we do have some professional football players who went to local high schools, and it's exciting, but there's not that many. And if you look at the number of opportunities, it's even less. So women's basketball, unfortunately, is less than the men. Football is not that high. There's more for baseball and more for hockey. But again, what's really important as you're going through this process is to really think about, is this a good fit for me academically as well as athletically? And then does it just fit who I am as a person? So let's talk about navigating that recruiting process. So first and foremost, academics do matter. Okay, just the slide represented that. You're going to come out of college, you're going to have a great experience, you're going to play the sport that you love, but in the end, you need to find a career. You need to find something that will help sustain you for the rest of your life. And so academics do matter. And you want to make sure that you're asking the right questions when it comes to academics. If you're looking at a school and a coach says, yeah, you're not allowed to major in engineering, that's too difficult, that'll take away from your time practicing, competing, you might want to think twice. If you want to be an engineer, you're going to be spending 4 years of sometimes 5 years of your life going to class and doing all the work. Do something that you love, do something that you want to pursue as a career once you finish school. So be sure you ask the academic questions, meet with advisors if you can, meet with faculty if you can, and really find out what is it like to be a student at that school, and then secondly, a student athlete. Take initiative. You cannot just sit back and think that all these coaches are going to come knocking on your door. So start to do your homework. One of the easiest things to do is just start getting on the internet. If, let's say, Loyola is of interest to you, Illinois Wesleyan's of interest to you, Lewis University is of interest to you, a Division I, Division II, Division III school, take a look at their roster. Who's on their roster from this area? Who's on their roster, maybe even from your own high school? Who's on the roster from a competitor? Who's on their roster from a competing club that you played on? So start to get a feel for the 3 divisions and the level of play. It's a little difficult now because of COVID, but if you can, drive around those campuses. You know, one of the things, like I mentioned with Loyola and with Lewis, there's a Division I school probably within 30 minutes of your home. Division II, not quite as many, but between Parkside and Lewis, you could go visit a Division II school within an hour. And then Division III, they're everywhere. Definitely one within 30 minutes of your home. So take a tour, just go around on your own. You don't have to do anything formal. Just go drive around campus. Look at their schedule. If you're a high school basketball player, look at their schedule, and without the coach even knowing, just go watch a game. Just get a feel for what it's like. See what the coach is like. Again, you'll get a feel for the entire division just by going to a game. And so take that initiative and then start reaching out to coaches. When you do take that initiative, do your homework. Don't send emails to the coach that was fired last year. Don't send your emails to the coach who retired 3 years ago. Make them personal. Again, look at the roster. Hey, I see Diane is on your roster. She and I played together at Prospect High School. Or I see Steve is on your roster. He and I competed against each other in club. So again, they would be like, wow, this kid has taken the time. This isn't a mass email. They've taken the initiative to look at our school. They've done their homework. I'm going to respond. But if there's addressed to the wrong coach, or you forget to change the name of the school in the body of the email, that has happened before, you may not get a response at all. On the flip side, if a coach reaches out to you, be responsive, even if you're not interested. So if a coach from Connecticut reaches out and you're like, there's no way, I'm not going halfway across the country. You know what? That coach may end up taking a job at Elmhurst, or that coach could end up taking a job at Dominican. So be polite, be responsive. Coach, thank you very much. I'm just not interested in going that far from home. I'm going to stay in the Midwest, but I wish you the best of luck. That's all you need to do. That coach ends up somewhere else, they may remember you and say, hey, you said you were staying in the Midwest. Now I'm in the Midwest. Or you turn a coach down at some point, you do it politely, and all of a sudden, after your freshman year in college, you're like, you know what, I want to transfer. I'm going to reach back out to that coach. If you were responsive and responsible, then make sure you're going to make sure that they will remember you, and they may offer you an opportunity to come to them as a sophomore. So do not burn bridges by not responding. And remember, coaches are recruiting you. They're not recruiting an athlete. They're not just recruiting a student. They're not just recruiting a point guard. They're not just recruiting a freestyler. They're recruiting you as a person. And so you want to, share as much about yourself as you can, not over the top obnoxious where you go on and on and on. But if you're on a Zoom call and you just sit there and you don't say anything, coach is going to say, well, I guess they're not interested. It may be your number one choice, but you just blew it because you didn't respond, or you were on the Zoom call and you seemed distracted and you were looking at your phone, whatever the case may be. They are recruiting the whole person. So let them meet you, let them get to know you, let them figure out, are you a good fit? And then you're going to figure out, are they a good fit for you? Couple other things, profiles, have an online profile, make sure it's up to date. If stats change or other things change, you have to continue to update those profiles. You can do a simple profile yourself. You don't have to do anything fancy, but just something that you can attach to an email. Videos are really important. As I said, now coaches are able to see some more contests via streaming, but not all your contests are being live streamed. So swimming, track and field, cross country, some of those sports don't have the opportunity for live streaming. So videos are very important. It doesn't need to be a highlight film. Okay, so based on some of the highlight films that I saw, I was recruiting Olympians because all I saw were the good plays that they made. They cut out everything else. So sometimes the video is pretty short, but just show some good game clips. You know, if you make a mistake, coaches want to see how you bounce back. So even if you give up a home run, you know, that's okay. Show that the next time the next batter comes up and you struck them out. So videos are good, but again, don't just make them a highlight film. Show some game film, maybe even just show some drills. Depends on your sport. You can even ask a coach, hey coach, I'm getting ready to put together a video for you. What would you like to see? Recruiting services, I always say buyer beware. And I share this story to kind of put in perspective. There are some good ones out there. There are some not so good ones out there. And even within some of those that are decent, they have some employees who aren't always honest. When I was working at Northwestern, I was in the office on a weekend and my phone rang, which was odd for a weekend, but I picked it up. And it was a father who they had been talking with a recruiting service. And the individual at the recruiting service that they were talking to said he played football at Northwestern. And this father looked online and he couldn't find him anywhere. So he and I spoke, and I had a database of everyone who had played football at Northwestern, and this guy was not on it. So he had basically lied and was telling families that, yeah, I was a Division I football player, played at Northwestern, and it wasn't true. So again, you know, there's some reputable firms out there. There are some that are kind of fly by night. They'll take your money. The one thing about recruiting services is they cannot negotiate a scholarship on your behalf. The minute they do, they become your agent and you've now lost all of your eligibility. So they cannot do that. All they can do is get your name in front of people. They can't take money from schools to try to place you, and they cannot sit down with a coach and say, yep, I need you to give this young man or this young woman this scholarship. That's just not possible. So if they say that's what they're going to do, turn and run real quick. Social media is a key right now to recruiting. So you need to be following the schools and the coaches that you're interested in. They're definitely going to be following you. So use it to your advantage. Post a highlight, post a post-game recap, whatever you can do to continue to gain attention from these coaches. They will sit there, and it may not be the head coach, but the assistant coaches they'll go on Instagram and they'll be checking everyone out. They'll be looking on Twitter. So make sure you use your social media to your advantage. It can also kill you if you have inappropriate posts, if you make some bad judgments on social media. So be very, very careful of how your social media portrays you, again, as the whole person. So when you're trying to make a decision or even just narrowing down your list, there's a couple considerations you need to make. Top 3 major choices. Why do I say 3? You're 16, 17 years old. We want you to figure out what you want to do for the next 40 or 50 years of your life. So you may go in thinking, yep, I want to be a lawyer. Mom and dad, absolutely, we want you to be a lawyer. Well, then you get to college and you realize, yeah, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be an engineer. I want to be an anthropologist. Who knew? Well, you don't know what you don't know. So go to college. Maybe you have an idea in mind. Maybe you go in as undeclared. That's okay too. But just think about, okay, I think I want to be a teacher. I might want to be an athletic trainer, or you know what, maybe I want to be a nurse. Okay, can you do any of those 3 at the school that you've chosen? If so, then go for it. If you say, nope, I can't be a teacher and I can't be a nurse, I could be an athletic trainer, well, look to see, is that the right fit for you then? The academic atmosphere, you know, you all are at pretty large high schools, and so you've learned how to learn in larger classes. But you may find that going to some of these smaller schools, like a North Central or a Carthage College, where the classes are smaller, is actually much more conducive to your learning styles. So what is the academic atmosphere? If you go to a U of I, you're going to have some teaching assistants. You may find there's more online classes, which you may like after the last year or so, but you may say, I don't ever want to take an online class again. And I'm looking here, and if I go to this large school, I'm going to have to take half my classes online. So that's a really important key, especially now with the number of online offerings. What's the academic reputation of the school? Again, if you have the dream of going to med school or PA school, then you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up to be able to make that transition. If you're into music, you know, you want to make sure that there's opportunities available for you in the area which you're looking. So Western Illinois in Macomb may not be the best choice if you want to go into art or music. Nothing against Macomb, but it's not exactly a cultural mecca. So going to NYU might be a better choice. And then, as I mentioned, the demographics, the size of the school, private versus public. You just want to see, where do you feel best? Where do you feel most comfortable? Where do you think you can learn the best? Where do you think you can thrive? And some of you are just fine with those large campuses. You going to Michigan where you have to take a bus from one side of campus to the other. That's fantastic. I love it. Others are like, you know what? I kind of like Carroll University, just outside Milwaukee, near a big city, but it's small enough where people are going to know me. So where do you feel most comfortable? Notice we haven't talked about the athletic considerations yet, because again, this decision has to have an academic component to it. You cannot just make your decision based on athletics. But when looking at athletics, these are some of the things you want to think about. So playing time. So some of you have played your whole career, started as freshmen, moved all the way up. Well, surprise, when you get to college, the majority of the individuals on that team are all conference. Not everyone can play. So sometimes going to a highly successful program will mean you're going to sit the bench for a year or two. Sometimes going to a program that's on the rise, maybe they weren't so good, might give you an opportunity to start as a freshman. So you have to kind of think about that. Do you want to sit the bench on a winning team, or do you want to be a starter on a team on the rise? Something to think about as you're making this decision. Playing time, again, sometimes you're fine being a small fish in a big pond. I'm going to go to Iowa because that's what I've always dreamed of, going to Iowa, competing for Iowa. And if I don't play, that's okay. I just really want to go to Iowa. Others are saying, you know what, if I can't play, I'm going to go Division III where I know I can play. Family support. So some of you have had mom and dad in the bleachers your entire life. Since you started soccer at age 4, they've been there. Well, you've got to think about, will they be able to come and watch you play if you go away to, say, Gonzaga in Spokane, Washington? There's 2 flights in and out from Chicago, direct flights. They're not going to be able to come out and see a midweek game, for example. And for some of you, that's okay. You're tired of having mom and dad in the bleachers. So this would actually be a good option. But others are, as you think about it and you think, gosh, I really want mom and dad to be able to come and watch me play as much as they can. So you know what? I'm going to go to North Park. It's in the city. It's only 40 minutes max, even in bad traffic. That's what's going to happen. So talk about that option with your parents. I always talk about, when I was at Division I at Northwestern, their softball team, they started their season in February Before they even went on spring break, they competed in Arizona, California, and Florida. So that's 3 weekends in a row, 3 different parts of the country. Then while I was there, twice they went to Hawaii for spring break. Then they came home and they started their Big Ten schedule. And at the time it was Iowa to Penn State. I mean, it went halfway across the country. You can see how expensive that would be to follow your son or daughter if they were playing Division I softball. When I coached Division III at Dominican, we went to Florida for spring break, and many of the families came, and that was their family vacation. And then when we came home, for the most part, our midweek games were all within an hour. And then if we had to travel a little bit farther, sometimes we would go to Dubuque or up to Milwaukee. Those we would play on weekends, so hour and a half. So it was easy for families to follow us. So you want to have that conversation. And then the last is home for the holidays. You know, we just went through Thanksgiving break. Well, there are a lot of collegiate student athletes who did not go home for Thanksgiving. There are a lot who will only get maybe 2 or 3 days around Christmas as far as a mid-semester break goes. If you're a spring sport, you're definitely not going to be around for spring break. Your team will travel for sure over spring break. So it does make a difference. D1 is going to be much more demanding. They're also going to want you to stick around for the summer. D3, there's no training in the summer on campus. You can do that on your own. You generally get a week off at least around Christmas, sometimes more. You're still traveling for spring break, but there's just much more flexibility at the D3 level than at the D1 level. And then last is the other costs. So if you're playing D1 football, you're not paying for your helmet or pads. All that's taken care of. But if you're playing Division III tennis, you're probably going to be asked to pay for your spring break trip or help fundraise for your spring break trip. You definitely have to buy your own racket, and you may even be buying your own shoes. Division I tennis, you're not. So there are other costs that come along with playing Division II and Division III sports that you don't encounter when you play Division I. So you want to ask coaches, hey, what are the other costs I need to be considering? So final thoughts. So this is really a 3-step process. Coaches are going to look at your academics. And the reason they do this is if you're not eligible, you are of no value to them. If you can't compete, there's no reason for you to be offered a scholarship, offered a roster spot. If you have to sit out a year, that's tough. If once you get to school, you can't handle the academics and become ineligible, again, you're not going to be helping your team. So they're going to look at your high school academics, and they're also going to make sure that they are comfortable that you can succeed at the collegiate level academically. Next is athletics. Obviously, coaches need to win. So they do need individuals who can help them compete. So they are going to look at your athletics. They are going to look at a variety of things. Not only are they going to look at your athletics, but how do you relate to your coach? Are you a good team member? There were a lot of coaches when I was at Northwestern, they'd be recruiting and they'd say, boy, this kid is really talented, but I just don't think he's going to fit in or she's going to fit into our team. Did the other students didn't get along with him or her on the visit, or I just didn't get a good vibe. And so they just said, we just don't think this is a good fit. So athletically, you have to be able to fit into the team, whether you're a starter, whether you're sitting on the bench, no matter what. Probably the most important piece of this puzzle is your character. And there's a lot of ways coaches will evaluate your character. One, when you meet with them, when you speak with them, are you polite? Are you walking in? Are you shaking hands? Are you making eye contact? Even with a Zoom, again, are you sitting up? Are you making eye contact? Are you talking with them? How are you dressed? When you go to visit with a coach, you don't have to wear a shirt and tie by any means, but make sure that you've got clean clothes on, not jeans with all sorts of rips and tears, and not jeans that are slouching down, past your waist. Just look presentable, okay? Make sure that you look presentable, almost as if you're going in for an interview. They're going to see how you treat your parents or the other adults who are with you. And you're like, come on. Well, think about it. You are trying to impress the next adult in your life. That's who the coach will become. They will become the next parent-like figure for you. And if you treat your current parents, or not your current parents, but if you treat your parents, your guardians, if you're rude to them, if you say things like, oh, shut up, knock it off, leave me alone, those types of things, coach is going to be like, are they going to say those things to me? Because I'm the next adult figure in their life. So it is important how you treat your parents. You're on a Zoom call. Maybe your mom or dad or your guardian doesn't know you're on a Zoom call. And so they call out your name. How you handle that is going to show whether you're respectful or not to adults. You yell and say, I'm on a call, leave me alone. Or just say, sorry, I'm on a call. Can we talk about this in a minute? Or you mute your microphone and you say, I'll be right back, coach. And then also your social media. It's not only your social media, it's your voicemail message, it's your Zoom photo, it's your Zoom background. All of those things tell a story. They tell a story about you. You could be a straight A student, you could be all conference, you can be rocking it. But if you don't have good character, and if there are any concerns whatsoever about your character, the coach is going to say, you know what, it's just not worth the risk. So be sure your social media presence is appropriate. Be sure to take old photos down if they should not be up there. Again, your Zoom link or your Zoom photo, your Zoom background, your voicemail message, all of those things, your email address, all of those things tell the story of who you are. And that's what coaches will be looking for. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take this off. And then Christopher, if you want to let me know if there are questions in the chat.
Yeah, there was. So first, thanks for so much great information. I was nodding along and remembering again my experience as a athlete, and some of the stuff you said hit home. So as I mentioned, I was a Division I athlete, but I was not a scholarship athlete. I basically recruited myself. I reached out to the coaches. I was picked to be on the team, and then the coach changed over the summer and they kind of inherited me. So a lot of that stuff, again, make your opportunities is, I guess, what I would say. So enough about me. Some of the questions that you have. One question was, is NCAA Division I, II, and III, is that based on like the population of the schools, or how is that determined?
So schools declare and they become, Division I, Division II, Division III. Division I, they offer more scholarship money and more sports. Division II also offers athletic scholarships, but at a lower level and generally less sports. Division III, there are no athletic scholarships whatsoever. Any aid that you will receive would be based on financial need, academic scholarships, community service scholarships, other scholarships. And again, I mentioned earlier about that guide for college-bound student athletes. There's also additional explanations in that guide. So if you go on and you create that profile, you'll be able to see more information about that.
Great. Just an FYI for everybody, we do have a district-wide student athlete recruitment guide that we have put together, and all of your schools post-secondary counselors have that. I'm not sure if they put it on their websites or where, but they have that has links to some of these things that we've mentioned, the sliding scales, the recruitment guides, the academic qualifiers. So we do have that resource that will be available. And so just ask your school's post-secondary counselor. If you're a Hersey student, I'll send it out with the recording. Some people have asked about the recording. If all goes well, I will have it to your school's post-secondary counselors tomorrow, and then they'll send it out as soon as they can. So just kind of a side note there. Going back to the eligibility center, just real quick. I don't believe the profile is a new thing, right? That's been around for a while. That's the free version. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's at least 5 years, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I told someone it's been around, I think, at least since all the current high school students have been in high school. So if you have older parents, if you have older siblings or students, they may not have had it. The eligibility center for D1 and D2 does cost $90. Some people ask, but there are fee waivers available. So talk to your school's, your counselor about that. A few questions about sophomores setting up an account on the eligibility center. Is that too early? Should they wait? And especially, should they wait if they don't have an SAT or ACT score, or should they just go ahead now and create it and add that stuff later?
Yeah, I would set up a profile now, because as I mentioned, to set up the profile, they're not going to ask you for any of your academic information. They're just going to ask for the name of your school and then your contact information, which then gets you on the email list to get the updates. It also then, once you're in there and you have an account, you can then navigate all the resources that are available to you. So sophomores, if you've been contacted by Division I and Division II coaches, then you may want to consider setting up an account, and that's where you pay the $90. That's when you would send your transcripts, and then as soon as you take a test. If you haven't been contacted by a Division I or Division II coach as a sophomore yet, then just set up the profile, hang tight this summer. If you do start to get recruited or you start to have communications with D1 and D2, then you can switch over.
Great. Along with that, are there ways for parents to get these updates, or should they just log in with their student to the portal? Is there like a separate parent newsletter or something they can sign up for especially for, you mentioned some of the upcoming NCAA changes?
Not that I'm aware of. What you could do is put the parent's email address in there if you wanted. So that's one way to make sure. But I think, again, having that conversation with your child to say, hey, this is important. When these things come, you need to let me know. Or if you have a family email, use that email address, whatever. Just make sure you write down your email address and the password that you create. I can't tell you the number of students who forget.
All
And
right.
you can go on NCAA, or I'm sorry, on the Eligibility Center website, and there are a lot of resources that you don't need to have an account to see. It's just you won't get those email updates.
Great, thank you. We had a question about some different sports. So for instance, the District 214 just recently added lacrosse, which is not that popular, you know, in the Midwest, and for sure, and a lot of schools don't have it. Does that change how recruiting works for a sport like that isn't, you know, at every school, make it more competitive, different? Any thoughts on this, kind of those outlying sports?
So Division I lacrosse is not popular in the Midwest. However, Division III lacrosse is very popular in the Midwest. So there are many, many Division III schools, and more are adding it every day, it seems like. So it is a little different. You may have to convince some East Coast schools that Midwest lacrosse is still legit. You know, they have a little chip on their shoulder kind of out in the East Coast when it comes to lacrosse. But if you go on some of the websites and some of the rosters of some of those East Coast schools, you're going to see more and more Midwest kids are getting opportunities to go out east and play. And then you'll also see that schools like Elmhurst and Carthage and Illinois Wesleyan and Augustana, they all have men's and women's lacrosse. So there are plenty of opportunities in the Midwest to play lacrosse.
All right, great. What if you are talented in more than one sport? Can you play both in college at a school?
Great question. If you want to go Division I, you would have to be pretty outstanding in both sports to be able to play both. And sometimes you'll see it with football players being allowed to run track and things like that. It does not happen often at all. Division II, sometimes. Division III, it happens all the time. There are soccer, lacrosse players. There are cross country and track runners. There are water polo and swimming student athletes. There are a lot of opportunities to play two sports. I was talking with the coach at Wheaton, and their football team is very good. They were ranked 5th in the nation, so they were continuing on in the NCAA tournament. And he said, I really want them to keep winning, but gosh, I wish they'd get done because I got 4 guys playing football who are on my basketball team. And so, yes, coaches at the Division III level will be very flexible with you and allow you to play more than one sport. But if you're going to go D1, you're going to have to pick one.
I think part of that might be, you know, of course, one coach not wanting their athlete to get hurt playing another one, especially if they've given a scholarship. I remember my time, I went to DePaul. I ran cross country and track, which is technically 2 sports, but essentially the same thing. And I know some other students there, when they were done with one sport, like they used all their basketball eligibility, went to do track or, you know, something like that. So that could be a possibility. Going along that, I'm sort of adding this into that question. I know a lot of the scholarships are not full scholarships, right? So can you maybe mention about the partial scholarships and could you stack a partial football and track, or can you only get a scholarship in one sport?
Yeah, so some sports only offer full scholarships. So like Division I football, Division I men's and women's basketball, Division I women's tennis, Division I women's volleyball, they're all full scholarships. If you play and get a Division I scholarship, you can't play another sport because then you would have to count in that other sport. There are other sports like soccer, men's tennis, wrestling. They're all partial scholarships. Now, if you're a rock star, could you get a full scholarship in that group? Yes. But the majority are partial. And it's important to remember when I say partial, it could be as little as 1%. That's still considered an athletic scholarship. So when coach says, yep, we're going to offer you a scholarship, you need to get to the heart of how much are you actually offering me? Because you may leave there thinking, oh yeah, we're getting a full ride. And the coach is thinking, yep, I'm going to give them 10%. So it really depends on most sports. If you're on scholarship in one, you cannot play another because it would count against both sports. Again, Division III doesn't offer any athletic scholarships. Any aid you get is based on your academics, your extracurriculars, or need-based aid. And so you could play as many sports as you want. It wouldn't change your financial aid. The other thing too, on the reverse side, say you go to a D3 school and you decide, you know what, I just don't want to play lacrosse anymore. You walk away from lacrosse, your financial aid does not change at all. But if you go to a D1 or a D2 school on an athletic scholarship and you decide you don't want to play anymore, you will lose those scholarship dollars. So another thing to think about.
And some scholarships are offered for all 4 years, right? And some are on a year-by-year basis. So another question maybe to ask, is this guaranteed for 4 years, or are you just offering it to me for 1 year? On the flip side, we had a question that said, what if my students, not the star, they're a good player, they've got good grades, good character. Are there, opportunities for athletic scholarships? So I know when I went to school and I wasn't getting a scholarship, I was told, oh, if you really are, become great, we can offer you one sophomore year or junior year, senior year. Never panned out for me, which was fine, but I know that's one option. Is there any other, options for athletic scholarships if you're just, a decent player?
Yeah, again, there's different levels within D1. So you've got the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC. But like I mentioned, you've got an Eastern Illinois or Western Illinois. So somebody who maybe wasn't all conference in District 214, because obviously it's a strong district and strong conference, but you are a great role player, you might have an opportunity at a school like that. So don't dismiss it, but at the same time, you just have to be careful. You might go to that D3 school and get that full financial aid package that I spoke about, with some academic money, extracurricular scholarship, some need-based aid, or go to that Division II or Division I school and only get a 10% athletic scholarship. And so you may find that you'd be spending a lot less at that D3 school, even though maybe the price tag was a little bit higher. So I know District 214 does a financial aid symposium or workshop, and it's important, I think, for everybody to attend that and learn a little bit more about how financial aid works.
Definitely, yes. We have a senior one that already passed, and then we have a junior one for all juniors in March. So if you're a junior, stay tuned for that. You mentioned at the very beginning the junior college route. So what if you have, a student has okay grades and they apply to some 4-year schools and maybe academically they didn't get in, or they, so they want to improve themselves both, as you said, academically and athletically, and then try to get into maybe a more selective school academically and athletically afterwards. So like, how does that work? Does that count against your eligibility? Is the, obviously you'd be a transfer student. What does that mean? And maybe explain the transferring junior college to 4-year college option.
Sure. So you still only get 4 seasons. And so if you did play at the junior college, that would count as one of your 4. Some junior colleges have relationships with 4-year schools. So you might, I'm going to make this up because I don't know if it exists, but College of DuPage and North Central. If you go to College of DuPage for a year or 2 years, you get a certain grade, you can automatically be admitted to North Central. So they have relationships like that all over. So that's something to think about. The other is you can then, if say you're at College of DuPage or Harper or Oakton, wherever you're at, and you start to look, okay, I want to transfer after this first year to a 4-year school. Those 4-year schools will work closely with you. But the sooner you start to look, the better, because if you're going to be short classes or credits, the sooner you know that, the better. You could adjust your spring schedule or even take a summer school class if you need to get caught up, if something wasn't going to transfer. Obviously, if it's below a 100 class, it's not going to transfer to a 4-year school. So you want to make sure you're taking at least 100 level classes or above. And you can talk with your advisor at the junior colleges and say, do most 4-year schools accept this class, this class, this class? They'll be able to tell you. They've had enough students. That's all students do out of junior college, really, is transfer out. Either they transfer out into the real world or they transfer out to another 4-year school. And so they are very well versed in that.
Great, thank you. Going back to the eligibility center, a couple more questions on that. Do the coaches use that? Can they, in the recruiting process, do they have access to it and see who's in there and recruit people out of there?
They do not. So There's not enough information in there because there's no athletic data in there. So there's no stats. You're not going to, enter if you're all conference. It's really just your academics. And then they will ask some information about like outside teams you competed with. And that's just to demonstrate that you're an amateur in your sport. It's not to show, how competitive you are or how skilled you are. So a lot of coaches don't even look at the eligibility center. There would be somebody on campus who works in the compliance office, and they're the ones who actually monitor the eligibility center.
Great. So then if they're not using that, then it kind of goes back. We did have a question and you answered most of it about the recruiting services. And you said there's some that are more favorable. I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing any that you find more favorable to work with. But that was a question. So are there any that you would recommend or?
I don't know. I haven't kept up with them, but this is what I would do. I would look to see who in the most recent class or the most recent team used a recruiting service at your school, whether it be the same sport you were in and another sport, and talk to those parents about their experiences. There are some consultants out there who will charge you a couple $100. They'll sit down with you and your family and go through all the information like we talked about tonight, and maybe even help you kind of narrow down your list. They'll charge, like I said, a couple $100, and that may be a good route. Some of these elaborate packages that the recruiting services are selling, they can be several $1,000s. I've actually heard one charging like $5,000. That's a lot of money. And unless, and to be honest, if you're good enough to get a 4-year scholarship, say at a Notre Dame, that you're already on somebody's radar because they've seen you, they've heard about you, your name's floating around in the recruiting circles. So we're not in Podunk, middle of Illinois, hard to get noticed kind of thing. District 214 is on every Division I coach's radar because we have Division I students from the Mount Prospect, Arlington Heights, Buffalo Grove, Rolling Meadows, Wheeling area. There's D1 students all over the country playing sports. So if you're that good, coaches are going to be looking for you. Doesn't mean you should sit back, and wait. Yeah, they're going to show up any day now. Yeah, they may not. So you just need to reach out. Go to camps. I know they cost money, but if you have a camp or a school you might be interested in, if they have a one-day camp, go do that camp. Again, start to watch. You can even watch games online. You don't have to go to campus, but it just gives you a feel for the environment. But you can watch online and kind of make your own assessment and say, I really think I could play at this level, or wow, they're much more athletic than I am. Maybe I need to go down a level.
Yeah, and I would just add too, because of the cost involved, is there what you're paying for? Is that something that your school's coach or post-secondary counselor, can do for you for free? We can help you walk through some of your options in a lot of schools, between media classes can help even make videos and things like that. So take advantage of all the resources that your school has. And I know I've come, in certain sports too, and I may, correct me if I'm wrong, but for instance, I ran cross country and track. It's times, right? Especially on the track or in the pool, how much you need to pay, so what kind of highlight video, I don't know, would that be? It's like, here's your times, the clock doesn't lie. You don't need to necessarily pay someone to, help you put together your best times or something. If you're maybe in another skilled position that doesn't have a ton of stats, maybe you would want to look into that. So that's another thing I would personally say to consider. Like some sports, for sure, the times posted in the paper and they're going to see it and you're going to be on their list. So, so kind of keep that in mind. I have a question that didn't come up at all, and I don't know how prevalent it really is in the grand scheme of things. But you talked about amateurism and making sure, you know, you're an amateur, don't sign these recruiting people to be your agents. However, there's new law apparently that students can get paid for their image now. And so does that fit into any of this process? Like, should students be like, which school is gonna, you know, get me on commercials or sell my jersey? Or is that really, you know, not common at all?
So it's interesting. There's some data out there about how much student athletes are averaging with their name, image, and likeness. And it's by a company that has been hired by schools to help students with this process. And on average, I think the average Division III athlete has made $35. The average Division II, I think, is around $50. And Division I, yes, there are some who are making a lot of money, the top of the top. But the average Division I student athlete has made less than $100 if they've gotten anything. So first and foremost, IHSA has not opened the door completely and said you can go use your name, image, and likeness as a high school student athlete. So be careful with that. Make sure you're talking with your athletic director before you do that. Second of all, some schools will use that as a recruiting advantage. Yeah, we're going to get you this, we're going to get you that. The schools can't be involved in these negotiations. And so it's important to remember that you will be involved. You will sign the contracts. And what we're seeing for the majority of students is the local pizza place. Hey, Christopher, you got a lot of followers on Instagram. You're the captain of the lacrosse team. Do us a favor, post on Instagram every time you come in and get pizza, and we'll give you free pizza. That's the extent of the majority of contracts or the majority of agreements that are out there. It's not thousands and millions of dollars. If in fact you are the top of the top and you're going to be recruited by all the Division I programs to play a marquee sport, because again, even if you are the best swimmer in District 214, swimmers just are not getting the same opportunities that football and basketball are getting. So if that's the case and coaches are telling you that this is what we can help you do, dig a little deeper into that. Most schools' athletic websites have their NIL policies posted. So schools did have to come up with a policy, and most have that posted as to what they would do. One of the benefits through Division I in particular is you will get some coaching about entrepreneurship, marketing yourself, those types of things, because there's much more at stake if you do make a mistake at the D1 level, because again, you're on scholarship. So if you mess this up and you lose your amateur status, then you're no good to that school anymore. So you will get some benefits from this about those types of topics. But don't go thinking you're going to make tons of money. It's just not going to happen.
All right, thank you. Sounds good. So that ends, I believe, I didn't miss any of the questions. That's all the questions that came to me. So, and we are coming up here on the 8:30, which we were going to kind of cut off at that point anyway. So just a quick reminder, assuming the recording goes well, I will send that to your school's post-secondary counselors by the end of this week. And they will send it out to you as they're able to. We want to thank Ms. Hardy so much for all her expertise and her time tonight. And again, if you have questions, please reach out to your school's post-secondary counselor or your regular counselor. Talk to your coaches because they can help you assess your athletic ability as well. And we are all here to help you with this process. So thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you again, Ms. Hardy, for your expertise. I hope everybody has a great night, and we will hopefully see you all at some of our other events throughout the spring, including hopefully back in person, our 214 College Fair in April. So we're really excited about that. So thank you, everybody. and have a great night.
If you have any questions, please contact your school's post-secondary counselor.